Good morning, everyone, from Dunrovin Ranch in Lolo, Montana. I'm here to welcome you back for news from the Hashknife Ranch and my great friend, Brandon Carpenter. Today, he's going to give us the rundown on how you trace the lineage of a horse, collecting DNA, and explain why it's important for somebody who is in the business of raising, breeding, and selling horses to be able to verify that what they are selling is what they purport it to be. And I'll talk with Brandon a little bit after that because I too have done some breeding, and there are pros and cons to how you go about doing all of this. And I'm looking forward to talking with him about that. So with that in mind, let's hear from Brandon. James, let it roll.
Good morning from the Hashknife. I want to kind of cover a little bit of paperwork type of activity and why we do what we do with our registered Tennessee walking horses. We produce horses and have a product, as you would call it, for sale for the general public. And what we need to do with that product is basically prove that it's what we say it is. Is it a registered Tennessee walking horse? Well, how do we accomplish that? A number of years ago, they started using science technology. Basically, everybody knows what DNA is and how it can be traced and how it can prove parentage. So we've moved that into not just horses and cattle, but there's a lot of other different types of markers that are used to verify or prove that someone is who they are. And the process about that has changed over the last few years. We used to basically do a needle stick and pull blood, draw blood from the horse into a couple of different vials, just like you would do when you go get a blood test or a blood workup at your local healthcare provider. And you would put those in a pack and ship them off as quick as you could to a laboratory. Well, that was after you made a registration application. And in order to do that, you have to list the dam, the sire, and show their registration numbers because they've also been parentage verified. And it isn't just to prove that it's a horse, it's to prove that it comes from a specific set of parents. Again, to prove a genealogy or a certain line. So you make that application, and on that application, you put down the phenotype. And so we'll cover some of the paperwork that's involved, why they do it, what they do, and then we'll go ahead and instead of a needle stick now, we'll just go pull a couple of hairs. They need about 25 to 50 root hairs on an animal, and you put it in an envelope and you send it off. A whole lot different than it used to be. There were times when we would pull samples on these horses in sometimes freezing cold weather because it was getting down to a deadline of the 6 months that the registrar or the breeder organization would allow to have you to do that. Now it sounds like you're procrastinating, but you're not, because horses can change color from the time of birth to, certainly within a couple of years. And so this DNA kind of helps track that a little bit, where you still want to be as accurate as you can. You want to wait till nearly the last minute or the last little bit before the 6 months is up to submit the DNA, so that you can really be accurate on the application about what the color of this animal is probably going to be. You still put in some things like, they've got a gray modifier in the case of this horse that we're going to do. When she was first foaled, I would have bet money that she would have been kind of a grayish color within 6 months. And right now I'm not really seeing anything. So probably wrong. And that's why this is also handy. But I've seen horses also change color, 2 to 3 years after foaling. So some of those colors can change over time. They can darken, lighten, and we'll kind of go over some of the application process, what registration should look like, the interim registration they send you, and then also the paperwork that we use to submit the sample. So kind of nice. We're not going to have to do any kind of a needle stick today. I can just pull a couple of hairs and call it good. So we'll go over this paperwork next and then go outside. This is the registration application, and it's also a request for a kit to get some DNA and prove parentage on their horse. The Breeders' Association for the Tennessee Walking Horse makes this actually pretty easy. This is a downloadable form. It used to be you just had to get them sent to you, but these are now, just right off of the computer. And you simply fill this thing out. The first thing you do is ask for whichever type of registration you want, or a nomination for some of their programs they have. And this, for us, of course, is just for a parentage verification and registration. You simply check that. And then you have to decide, inadvertently pick a name of another horse that's out there. We almost always, I don't think we've ever not done this, and that is put the name of a ranch in front of the horse's name. So if it says Hashknife something something, we know that come from our place, or someone else would know that if they're familiar with our animals. The other part of that is it almost guarantees that you're going to get the animal's name that you want. For instance, this horse, the first choice was filled in as Hayhook Silver Envy. Hayhook is the ranch my mom and dad went by, and so all of their horses are still there. My mom still has a couple horses, and this being one of them. So we put in Hayhook Silver Envy, and as a first choice, didn't even fill out the second and third choices, and got the name just because the rarity of Hayhook being in front of something. So you got 25 different characters, including spaces, to put a name down, and sometimes these can get kind of lengthy and be quite a handle on an animal if you're not careful. The other part they want to know is everything about this horse. They want to know the state that it was foaled in. They want to know the foaling date, and then the breeding date, whether this was a single exposure to a stallion, or if the animal was pasture bred, the mare was pasture bred to a certain stallion from and to dates, say, for instance, June 1st to August 15th or August 31st. They want to know those dates because that also has to coincide with the stallion report that is filed by the breeder, whoever is standing a stallion every year. And I, of course, our stallion was the one that is another double check that this is truly an animal that's been done there. And I think this is really a holdover of how we used to do things, because DNA is what's really going to determine that. This is really kind of a relic in a way as far as the breeding dates. Then they want to know whether this is a little stallion, mare, or if this is an older, a lot more money in order to make that happen. But they want to know the sex of the horse. And then you come over here to one of the most important parts, and that is the phenotype. They want to know what this horse looks like so that it goes on the registration papers, even though this is a DNA verification type of request. So you can write down none on the body markings. And for this particular little filly, she is a solid black. There are no markings on her whatsoever. She is black all over. And so this is very easy. You don't have to do anything but just mark none. But if she was to have some white on her, or this was a bay horse, or meaning kind of a dark red with black legs and black mane and tail, you would write that in. And it shows the right side or off side, and then on the left side or near side of this horse. And for us, we don't raise the paints, so it's pretty easy. We talk about mane, tail, and the face, and then the legs. And you can see here with the legs, you have what is called different descriptions of markings. So you can see where it says stocking there and the dotted line that goes across. If the white goes up to that, that's called a stocking-legged horse. I mean, it's as simple as that. The sock, the same way, goes up to the middle of the cannon bone. And then the fetlock is the feet or the hooves. And it really says like R4, L3, L1, R2. That's the same thing that's down here. You got 1 left 4, 2 is a right 4, and so they're marking those as right and left side, and a ability to describe what this horse physically looks like. Now the color by the breed association, and it starts from black all the way down to bay and brown, up to buckskin, down to golden champagne, gold cream champagne. I mean, there are varying degrees of some of these lighter colored horses, all the way down of those, for instance, like on your buckskins, dun colors. Some of the hair changes color, which actually lightens, except for like the legs and mane and tail for your dun colored horses. On the gray modifier, that's what we've already checked, because her stallion was a gray horse, so she could at some time gray out, and we want to make sure that that modifier is listed in the genetics as a possibility. And she may not. As it turns out, I don't think she will, but you never know, and in a couple of years that can happen. So then we move over to the face markings, and they want you to draw in every white area, and they are very specific about the upper lip and lower lip and the chin. And if there's a white spot, and we have had just a single spot, for instance, on the chin, you draw that in where it's at and the approximate size in relation to the anatomical part there. And then you can do a star up between its eyes and high, a snip, which comes down a very thin part way, or a strip, which is all the way down the entire face. You've seen that, or also called a blaze. And then you have to just describe those facial markings. Simple as that. It's pretty easily done, and but it gives a specific written record as to what the phenotype looks like. And then, of course, you put in the owner application signature, and if you prepared it or not, or had someone else do it. And then one of the important parts that also has to go on this is the sire and dam information. Now, the sire's registered name has to go in, and the registration number along with that, and then who owned that sire at the time of the breeding to this mare. And the mare, or the dam, if you want to call it, more specifically or technically, their name goes in there as well. So all they're doing is recording the parents of this filly or applicant horse, so that they can absolutely verify through the DNA samples that that's who it was. Again, it's a relic, but now this one's a relevant relic. And then they ship you a verification kit, which used to be a blood draw, and now it's kind of nice to be able to do that. It's a little bit less traumatic for the horse. Sometimes you miss a vein, and I'll kind of show later on how I would expose a vein on a horse and be able to hit it maybe a little bit easier. All of the information is down here for the dam's owner, signatures, and time of service, who owned it. They really want to track not only the animal's parents, but the owners, because that can change between the time that the foal hits the ground till the time you're going to do the registration. So, and then of course a fee schedule. Nothing goes without some costs. So we'll put that in there, or have done that, and this is what allows you to do that, and pay for your verification kit and the registration fee, and then send that off. Okay, now this is what you get back after you've made the application and everything is okayed by the breed association. You get this temporary certificate, and what that really does is just show that the mare, which she's a filly now, but in time she will be a mare, and that her name indeed was submitted and accepted, and then they gave a registration number to her, and then who the horse is owned by, bred by, and then the sex, again, the color, and any markings that were on the horse that we put on the application, and of course there's none there. And then they have the full date of the mare as of the end of July of this past year. Then they have the sire's registration and the sire's name and color. And then they have the horse again with the registration number, color, and then the dam, who that foal came out of, and then the official okie dokie seal. Now, this is not a, as you can see in the watermark, it's temporary. It's not eligible for exhibiting or breeding the horse, but the horse could be sold. The one thing that we've got here is a big space that says no parentage verified. And but they still do have the ability to transfer, or somebody could sell this animal before the parentage is verified, and then that would come subsequent to that, and we'll show what the dam's registration is here in a moment. So this is the finished product of what you're looking for, and of course this is not hers, but this is her mother, her dam, and again, it shows basically the same information, that this is a mare, her name, registration number, who she's owned by, and color and markings. And she's a sorrel color, as if you've followed us in the past with this mare and the colt being imprinted, you'll notice the colors. And you can see the foal date is 2001. So this mare is coming 20 years old. She was 19 when she had this filly. And this is going to be her last colt. We won't need to, or won't breed her anymore. Then it shows her lineage, shows her name and registration number, and the SO stands for sorrel. And when you look at the lineage or her pedigree, it shows her sire, which is Hayhook Ace of Hearts, which is a stallion we had, his registration number and color, and then his parents. On the upper side, the top side, you've got the Pride Piper, and the bottom side, you've got Absarka Rosebud, and of course, CH is Chestnut, and SO is Sorrel, then their parents, and then their parents. And you'll see here, Midnight Sun was a World Grand Champion, that's what that WGC means, and was one of the early horses in the breed registry. And then you've got a bunch of, I see, he sired Pride of Midnight HF, and you'll see as we come down here on the bottom side, you'll see, there he is, Pride of Midnight HF again. So some of these do have some line breeding, way far enough way in back in the registration that is not harmful. And you want to be careful of that. And that's part of also the reason why you pay attention to your genetics as they are basically represented on the registration. So here you've got, again, all of these horses in this animal's past and how they look, what they had as a registration number, who they're related to, and also when they foaled. For instance, say this Pride's Black Shadow, the first two numbers in that registration is the year that he foaled. And if you go up here to Midnight Sun, he was foaled in 1941. So that was 2 years after the breed registry started as an official registry. And these horses have been around since basically we were in the colonies, pre-Revolutionary War days. So that's the front side of the registration that you're looking for. And the back side then shows, very similarly to the temporary registration, we have a color code key and the genetics. Instead of no parentage verified like the temporary had, we do have the parentage verified on this one. And you can see the name again, the sire, the dam, and the date that it was tested, her registration number, and they even have at the very top left there in the blood type information, the case number. So they go down to what lab work was even done on this, and then you have some of the allele information on your genetics, on your DNA, and then it says as a analysis that the indicated sire and dam qualify, and what that means is that they verified that those are indeed the parents. And then this was a blood type done by the University of Kentucky through their labs, and there's different labs that do this, but now we're again all in with a lot easier way to do it through hair samples. They're much more stable through the mail, so you don't have to worry about that. And then again, you've got this portion of it where you can transfer the certificate of registration and the horse upon sale. And of course, my mother has already signed this. In case she's not around, I can do it for her. And that's really what we're looking for as a final product. And we'll go outside here in a moment and we'll grab this little filly, and I'll show you what we used to do, how we used to get that blood sample. And now it is really much easier with the hair pull. Here's our little filly, and as you can see, she's got no white on her at all. And a lot of times the white will show up here, say in a flank or around their muzzle a little bit, and she's got nothing at all that's going to indicate that she's going to turn gray at this point. But we're going to put the modifier down on the application, or did, because her sire was a gray, and so she could eventually gray out in some spots or kind of half gray. And one of the things I want to show you is what we used to do is come right here into this groove, and you can see if I can push this, just kind of occlude this jugular a little bit, and you'll see how that opens up and reduces when I let the blood go. So we used to, good girl, hold on, sweetheart. We used to just come up here with a needle, hold that, open that up, and then stick it and be able to fill. So a little more traumatic that way. We don't have to do that anymore, and it's not a big deal, but it sure makes it a lot more mechanically harder to pull that hair when it's a little bit wiggly with a young colt not wanting to cooperate too much. There we go. And she's a good girl. As you can see, if you've been watching us at all on her imprinting, then it's kind of nothing different than what we've been doing. I just want to grab a bunch of turns on a stick here. Any old generic stick, didn't have to buy this anywhere, and do that so that it basically doesn't break the hairs. And I missed, so I'm going to have to get this a little bit better, but that's our goal. Try this one more time here. Good girl. That kind of didn't feel good. What the heck? What are you doing to me? Why? Do you know who I am? Do you know where I came from? Do you know how important I am to my mother, who has abandoned me? All right, we're going to have to give a little bit of a... And again, pardon the fingers in the camera. I need a couple more, or somebody else here holding the camera, but that's not an option today. So we just kind of wrap that around best we can. And her hair is so soft and so down-like that it's very difficult. There we go. I'm just going to kind of let her move off. It's all right. And show you what we have is a number, if you can see them, 25 to 50 hairs. And trust me, it's hard to see it in here, but the root bulbs are there. So we'll throw that on the paper and send it off into the mail. We should be seeing a registration back with her DNA in a couple of months anyway. All right. I hope this was helpful, educational, and as always, it was fun for us to kind of let you know what we do. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Brandon, for that wonderful video. This was really interesting to those of us who are kind of backyard breeders. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I've always been very careful in my breeding program. It's a very limited program. But for a family like you who has done this professionally for a long time, I think it's really important that people understand that the product is really reflective of all the breeding that goes into that particular horse. And you really have to be able to verify that.
Yeah, the breeding or the horse is part of it. For us, the training is the other part. So it's a marriage of the two for us, and you want to have good quality animals. And of course, anything can happen to an animal once they are exposed to humans, good or bad. So we want to verify that these animals come from us, and that we have a breeding program that is, specific to what our philosophy is, and that is a little heavier muscled horse, good solid bone, and I'll cover some of that on a subsequent video that we're going to do with selecting a stallion. So that'll be a little more in depth about it. But we talked last time about brands, which is basically a license to have or an ownership mark, but it doesn't verify who the animal it is. It only verifies who the owner is. This is a verification of that animal, that specific animal, through DNA. So it's a whole lot different than it used to be. And there's been some chicanery, you might say, in breed associations when they first start breeding horses. I remember my great uncle got into the Quarter Horse Association with a foundation stallion that was horrendous, but he met certain aspects of what they were looking for, and you would never breed that animal. But so there's some people that kind of undermine that here and there, or do bad things that will undermine the breed. So those are all issues that come up.
And I really want to point out that every breed has their registry, because each breed is basically aiming at different things. And the Tennessee Walking Horse breed is aiming at that really nice, smooth gait. And then breeders within that umbrella, like you and your family, are then being more refined in that breeding. You're looking for short backs and sturdy conformation, and your program is sort of a refinement within that. But the reason it's important that if people understand it's a Tennessee Walking Horse is that generally means that the horse has the ability to do that beautiful running walk gait. That doesn't guarantee it. I mean, there are Tennessee Walking Horses that can't gait, but if it's not a Tennessee Walker or another gaited breed, it really doesn't even have the potential.
Yeah, there's that whole spectrum of what kind of gait will it do, which is all based on that animal's fast and slow twitch muscles, how they're conformed. There's all kinds of things there that is genetic in nature, but not a specific gene for that. So it's about conformation of that animal. And those are the two things we look at. The mind has to be there. We have to have a good solid noggin in between those ears that is receptive to training, retains training, isn't wild and nutty. And then the conformation to follow that, so that you can have an animal that's not going to break down, it's not going to quit you or be too light of bone. A lot of things like that go into what we want to have for a horse to do cattle work, pack in the backcountry, pull, a conveyance of some sort, be it a sleigh or wagon or whatever. A good all-around using horse, as my dad used to say. So some horses cannot do that. And you're right, we've refined them. And by refined doesn't mean that we've gotten smaller or lighter. It's just that we have went to a certain genre of how we want this horse to look. And often people can't tell our Tennessee Walkers from a quarter horse.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and you get to be known for a certain type of a horse. I mean, you are known in the state of Montana for a really high quality, very intelligent horse. Almost all the horses that have come from your ranches show ease of training, people friendly, and hardy. You're looking for horses that can stand up. So that's one of the reasons that I was brought to you, was because that was the kind of horse that I was looking for, and people suggested that I look in your direction. I did want to bring up the issue of the Tennessee Walking Horse Association. You know, that's the Breeders' Association, and that's who keeps all of the records for the Tennessee Walking breed. And there's a lot of controversy about the Tennessee Walking Horse Association because in the show world, there's a history of what is called soaring of the Tennessee Walking Horse to animate really in the front end to get this really odd animated gait that evidently is appealing to some people, but because some of these trainers use artificial methods to encourage the horse to do that, and some of them are very painful. Some of them are really very cruel to the animals. So the Tennessee Walking Horse breed has gotten a bad reputation among people who care about animal welfare. And I've often gotten comments from people at the ranch who are somewhat familiar, not entirely familiar, but have heard of it, you know, have heard that this is a controversy in the horse world. And I always go to great pains to tell them that that has nothing to do with horses that are bred or used in the West. That even in our shows, we don't do that. We have Tennessee Walking Horse shows, and they are with a completely different emphasis than what is done in the East Coast. So could you address that?
Yeah, no, that's a very, very good point. Not only the East Coast, but the Oregon, Seattle area has their share of, I call them dirty birds. And it's a practice to animate the front end, just as you say, as those horses look like they're pawing the air as they're walking. And it is not unnatural by any means. And some of those methods that some of those trainers use are not just painful, they're absolutely cruel and can shorten the lifespan of the horse because of the appliances they put on them, chemicals they put on them, shoeing practices that they do to make these horses' feet hurt and can do long-term damage. And that is not what we do at all. And you're right. The breed has gotten, or the breed registry, and it has filtered to the breed because all people hear is a Tennessee Walker, so the first thing they think of is soaring or that issue. And although there's been some regulation, laws really passed, the animal cruelty laws, in order to combat that, it has not always done what it's supposed to do. And people, whenever you have a rule, they will cheat, lie, steal, and do whatever they can to get around that rule, and have been still successful at it. And there is a good old boy network alive and well that operates within that protect each other because they still want to have that. And it is a cultural thing within the horse world and within that horse breed or this horse breed. So every time I get something from the Tennessee Walking Horse Breeders and Exhibitors Association, I just cringe because it's like, this is not what we are. But this registration of this animal, proving its parentage, adds value to what it is. And there have been some offshoots of the organization to try to make a different breed registry that just doesn't quite work. So we have stuck with that. The one thing I did do, because we do register a fair number of animals, and you get basically one registration a year free as an incentive, and there's some other small incentives to breed, is I became a life member. A number of years ago. It's been 15 years ago probably, and so I never have to pay dues. Well, by doing that, I'm money ahead, and they get less money, so I'm not feeding the animal, only small pieces, not big chunks. So my way of protest, and when I did join as a life member, I said, I will join, but I do not want my name on a plaque anywhere. I do not want to be included as a life member for your propaganda of your horse. I was quite loud about it. So I'm not really in their great favor anytime, and I have been asked to teach some clinics in the South because you've attended some of my clinics as well as hosted some clinics, and it's not what we do. We do something entirely different, and we still want a good walk, but not that animated show type of a gait. So I have had some clinics that have been requested of me to do in the South. And when they go a little while and it gets closer to the clinic time and people are signing up, they want to know more about me. And I have been very honest that I am not for soaring. I am going to talk about how to make this horse work naturally within their body structure and good horsemanship. And you know what? I've never done a clinic in the South because they get canceled. So, hey, it's okay. So I can still talk loudly everywhere else.
It's really interesting because for a person that was new to the breed as an adult, like I was, and when I moved to Montana from Alaska, this was all very confusing to me. You know, I joined the Breeders Association, and then I would get these magazines with the photos on the cover, which I looked at very, quizzically and said, what is going on? What is all this? And I remember our own Montana Tennessee Walking Horse and Breeders Association. We had one for many years, and that's where I met you originally, was during one of the clinics at Three Forks. And we would send people back to the national, and always we were, speaking out against all of this kind of practice. And Montana no longer has that affiliation because of that. I mean, we've sort of broken off entirely because of the practices continued at a national level. But it puts people who breed in a really difficult situation. I have registered all my other horses before Augie, but I didn't plan on selling Augie. So I thought I'm not gonna feed the beast as you termed it. But it's really a sad situation because that reputation follows it even across the country, where the truth is that wonderful, beautiful gait is something that Western ranchers really value because they spend a lot of time in the saddle, and it really is softer on the human body to ride a gaited horse than it is a non-gaited horse. So can you talk a little bit about that? Why Tennessee walking horses are just so good at cattle and at ranch work, and that's
yeah, they are a very intelligent breed, very smart, and overall, and these are broad brushes that you're painting with, because you can't say this about everybody, everything, and they are very calm. You train a little easier, maintain the training, but they can also work cattle just as well as any other horse. The one thing that they are not as adept at is some of your rodeo type of sports, because they don't have that fast twitch muscle that, say, a quarter horse does. And the quarter horse has dominated the rodeo scene, and because of that, and the breeding between them, both of them are thoroughbred and Morgan breeding crosses, both the Tennessee Walker and the quarter horse. The quarter horse has draft horse influence in it, usually a Percheron, and the Tennessee Walker has a gaited influence called, it came from the Narragansett Pacer, which is a colonial era horse breed that is now extinct. And so they live on through this breed, but those are the only differences. But that created this fast and slow twitch muscle differences that is all about that short burst of speed. And that's what the rodeo people go on. Gaited horses have been around for eons. Paul Revere's famous ride was done on a Narragansett Pacer. Now, he never finished his ride, but it wasn't because of the horse. It's because he stopped at a pub, at a tavern, and the British caught him. So, but there's another fellow that finished that ride, but he doesn't get the notoriety. So, the breed itself is great for a lot of versatility. My walking horses will hold a pack saddle much better than most more rounded backed, because they have more defined withers than most rounded backed, say, quarter horses. So, backcountry work, they're strong. I've had people say, they can't hold up. And at the end of a week's worth of work, my horse is still going, just as strong as theirs, and in some cases has been stronger. But it might be the conditioning we've had him in too. But this is a very, very contentious thing that you bring up, and I'm glad you did, because it's something that we fight as a breeder. The only way that I can give this horse a chance for a turnaround in the notion that people have of it is to produce a horse that is not what people think it is, and showcase what this horse can really do and its talents and how it can behave. And that's, all we can do is just maintain what we're doing, because they're a phenomenal horse. Teddy Roosevelt rode a gaited horse out here in the West. Most of your officers during the Civil War rode gaited horses. Robert E. Lee's Horse Traveler, Tennessee Walker Foundation. Those were all really nice horses. They could travel. They were smooth, and those guys, arguably, they were in that saddle most of the time. So they've been around since colonial days, and most of these horses are of a very small, say, lineage that is becoming more and more diverse, and has become more and more diverse. So it's all what you want to do with them and how you want to treat them. And hopefully we get people to say, hey, this is not what, this horse is all about. It's not the only thing they do.
Absolutely. And I'm really proud to be associated with Tennessee walking horses. I mean, in terms of what I've been able to do with the ranch, people come here expecting a quarter horse ride. They get a Tennessee Walker ride and they won't go back.
Well, and there's been a lot of people that contact me that are 60 plus years old, haven't been able to ride for years because their back can't take it, and they learn about gaited horses. And Tennessee Walkers are not the only gaited horse, right, but they learn that, oh my God, I can ride again, and I love it, and I don't hurt, and I can get somewhere on them. So there's a lot to that. When you can take an old body and refurbish it on the back of a horse, that's pretty darn special.
Yeah, that's great. And in the back country, I never did much of the outfitting myself, because that's just plain hard work. I always hired outfitters, and I would take my string of walkers in first, and they'd say, we love you going in first. You're so much faster. Our horses are just, pumping to keep up with you guys, because it's almost like a target. They say, we go in faster when we go with you than anybody, because, you're out way ahead of us.
Right. Right. Oh, I've covered some tremendous distances on these horses in amazingly short amount of time, and not hurt the horse. It's just that's just the way they travel. Their foot, and we should try to do this sometime, is explain the gait differences and why there's so much more. It's about efficiency of movement, really, is what it is. They're working less hard and doing more work.
Let's do a demonstration sometime in my arena, and do as you have done previously, and we'll get some vet wrap and put it on people on the different legs, because it would be really fun to show people the different kinds of movement, a pace. And I've got several horses, you well know, who fall into a pace with no trouble at all, pace versus a walk versus a trot. Let's do that sometime. And I'm really glad you mentioned that you're going to talk about how to select a sire, because I think that's a really important thing. You think about a sire is going to have many, many, many offspring, as opposed to American have one a year, basically.
Right.
So it's really important that you select for what you want when you select that sire. So I look forward to that.
And so many people put so much emphasis on one or the other. And there was a movie that was done years ago, and it was a brutal movie, but it was kind of neat in a way. I mean, it caught my attention, called All the Pretty Horses. And it was asked of this guy about, he was a horse trainer, and this Mexican Don asked him, what's more important, the mare or the stallion? Because that's asked all the time. And he, for the first time I'd ever heard it, God almighty, I couldn't believe that Hollywood got this right. And he goes, both. They're both important. And the only difference is that the colt will tend to act more like the mare, because the colt's around the mare all the time. They pick up those habits, and it's about the nurturing side of that, the psyche of the animal instead of the nature, because they don't even know who their daddy is. You know, generally they just know who mama is, and will become very much similar traits in their behavior. So, but it's very important that you still have all of those underlying natural things that an animal does and how they think and how they react, and that's genetics, and that's crossing those genetics between both of those mare and sire.
Well, this has been great, Brandon. I always enjoy my conversations with you, and I know that our followers do as well. People are thanking us, and they're interested in all of this. So I look forward to our next conversation. I was with you when you looked at a couple stud colts a couple years ago, and I'm anxious to know how those two stud colts have worked out at your place. So I'm interested in what you come back with on selecting a stud colt. So with that, I'm going to pass you along to Ashley. I think she's on, and you can get started with Augie again. We've had a little bit of a setback with Augie. You know, we continue to fight this issue. I'm hoping it's not a permanent issue, but we're fighting it for sure.
Well, yeah, staying on top of it, trying not to do any damage, but at the same time, give him good exercise. It's a very fine wire to walk, and yeah, we don't want to hurt him, but we want to exercise him and give him a chance. So
break
it takes
that
a while.
in there, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Suzanne. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brandon. We'll catch you a little later.
All righty.
Ashley, are you there?
I sure am.